Okay, now we're live. What the hell?
Have we not been live this whole time?
The whole time, man. What the hell happened? I don't know. But anyways, okay, that's all right. It's all good. At least we got it before. What are we? I don't know, probably 15 minutes in. So that's not the end of the world, I guess. So I guess we'll have to start over. Holy shit, man! I'm so glad I caught that. Well, I didn't see the red light usually that's up there, but at least we know there's going to be a few people that have actually been kind of waiting around. So, anyways, let me start
Okay,
this
they
over.
trickled in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, sorry folks that I thought I was live and somehow I made a boo-boo. This is one of those situations where it'd be great to have a producer or someone in the background, but as you folks know, I'm a one-man band. Anyways, just to kind of reiterate where we were going here. So we got Andrew H. Anyways, he goes by the username Anti-Hatred Network on X, not to be confused with Anti-Hate Network. And Andrew, we wanted to have a conversation today. Basically, it's going to be along the lines of what does it mean to be Canadian. But before we actually get to that, there was one thing I wanted to cover. Actually, I'm not even going to worry about it this time. I'll just mention this. For those people that keep showing up these events and booing the Americans, man, you better fucking be willing to make sure that at least your team is going to win in that situation. Because how embarrassing was it? Although in a way it was kind of good the way it was set up, right? So you had the Americans down there playing Team America Canada. They played the national anthem. Of course, the Canadians in the Montreal booing, and probably Trudeau was probably the loudest one booing there. Anyways, and they ended up losing. But to me, that's the insanity part. Well, that's that collective guilt and punishment. Like these people that showed up the hockey game, whether the Canadian side or the American side, they're people just going to play a hockey game, right? It's not fucking Trump down there, but how insane is it that you got these people with this collective mindset, these collectivists in Canada, just like what was with COVID, right? The unvaccinated. Didn't matter who you were. All they had to do was say they're the unvaccinated. And somehow we were pariah and to be treated as such. Well, it's the same thing now as if you're anywhere aligned with Trump, which would mean now just American. It's just simply American. But yeah, they go on this big tirade and booing the Americans and their anthem, only to be owned by the Americans. And I got to tell you, folks, once again, I'm not playing for either team as far as that goes, but wow, it's quite the thing to see. And as much as I don't usually take a lot of joy in seeing Canadians lose like that, especially a hockey team, but under the situation and the way it played out, good on them. And not for the team, but good on the idiots in the stand who thought it was a good idea to sit fucking down, talk, or boo people that just wanted to play a hockey game. But anyways, before we get too far along into that stuff, like
one thing with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
With I think there's a rule in the charter that if you lose a hockey game, and we have we're no longer we're now part of the U.S. They win, they beat us. Now I think that's the rule, right?
Yeah. And I think that's section 44 or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm joking. Canada played really bad that game. Oh, they were terrible. They had one good goal. They were terrible otherwise.
Well, you know what's crazy? Actually, since we're kind of along that thing, is I've even said this for years, and I lived in Toronto. I actually lived on the east end of Toronto, Scarborough, Scarberia. Shout out to my Scarberian peeps on the east coast, on the east end of Toronto there. But I grew up there for the most part. That's where I met my wife, actually. My parents moved me up there from New Brunswick when I was 12. But and of course, I was even when I lived here in New Brunswick, even Leaf fans, because we don't have any actual NHL teams on the East Coast. So it was either Montreal, Toronto, or Boston, depending on who you were or what kind. But those were typically the teams supported. But I used to support the Leafs. But I'm just me. First of all, I'm not so much into the team sports as much as like hockey and baseball and stuff. I like doing things that's more man and machine. So I like racing, cars, snowmobiles, ATVs, dirt bike, anything that's got 2 or 4 wheels. I love that stuff. But one thing I've always noticed, and the big difference between the individual sports is it tests man and machine, whereas on the team sport, and I'm not adverse to team sports, but you might have 2 guys on that team that's fucking awesome and carrying the weight of the other one, and that was always something like someone's always dragging you down in some way. But I'm not even here to say that I'm not even saying that team sports is bad. But what drives me nuts is this thing. Now, as a Canadian, I would love to see, and I have friends that are big avid Leafs fans. And I would love to see the Leafs actually fucking win. Any Canadian team for that matter. I've been alive longer. I'm 54, and the Leafs have never won in my lifetime the Stanley Cup. And that's a fucking sad, disgraceful thing, considering, like I say, we are a hockey nation. And to me, when I see all these hockey fans and some of my friends and the ones that might watch the stream, it's not, don't take it personal. Don't get offense to it. But it's just like with my kids, right? I would never raise my sons telling them, oh, even if you keep coming in last, oh man, you're the best. Oh no, you're wicked, man. Because I know what would happen. They would never put in the fucking effort that they would require to rise to the top. And that's what I recognize and acknowledge with, like, whether you talk about the Leafs, right? Why? You can still get your fucking big fat paycheck and you don't even have to put in, but that's the thing. It's the spirit, right, of competition, and it seems to be greatly diminished in this country to the point where you're not just at the teams in terms of hockey and stuff, but even all the way down to the level of politics. Everything seems to be a fast track race to the bottom, and I'm just not a fan of it, because once again, I would try to for my fellow Canadians, I would, just like with my sons, I want to raise and elevate them. I don't want to fucking diminish their capacity or let them stew in their misery or pretend that, even though they came in last place, that they're number one, right? So anyways, what are your thoughts on that bar there, Andrew?
Well, I do find that there is a large strain of crabs in a bucket in Canada, in which it's like there's some people that do well.
Yeah.
But if you do well, generally, where do you go? You go down to the States, you make more money.
Yep.
And if you're in Canada, generally there's a lot of people that want to not see you succeed.
Yeah.
There isn't the sort of excellence that you can kind of get out of American politics or American business. I find that anyways.
Yeah, actually, you ever heard the terminology tall poppy?
Yes, gets trimmed, right?
Yeah, well, that's actually Australia and Canada seem to have a competition in who is best at chopping down the tall poppy, because that is something that I've noticed in this country as well. Although in the kind of sports I do, it's not as bad. There's a lot more sportsmanship and stuff. But I've seen that. Yeah, you better put on your humility hat, right? Because if you show any amount of pride or dignity or self-worth or self-respect, yeah, you're going to get it in spades. And that's a terrible, terrible mindset that I see that is very prevalent among the Canadian population. And I think, like I said, I just think it's soul crushing to see there's that many people that are willing to play those kind of games, because once again, you're not benefiting yourself. And as we're seeing as of last night after the game, well, you sure shit didn't benefit the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. I find it's very much for a lot of people, I find it, so why is there that trim poppy or the crabs in the bucket? It honestly is much easier for the ruling class to rule if they don't have people rising like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we do have a fairly, in some ways, competent education system, but our education system only goes so far, and there's a lot of propaganda. How much do the average Canadian know about the Battle of 1812? How much does the average Canadian know? Like we were talking before we apparently went live, we were talking about a lot of people think that Canada has always wanted immigration. It's been the elites that have wanted immigration, but generally the population has been very suspicious or anti-immigrant. Yeah. And most immigrants, when they come, they leave. And that you'll hear that part of, we want immigration, but they mostly just leave. They don't stay. We don't hear the part where most Canadians prior to the modern time, when asked, no, we're good. We don't need more people. We're good with what we got.
Right. Well, actually,
how much history is taught from the perspective that's not the regime's perspective? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's good, actually, because you were kind of still springboarded on the stuff we had talked about earlier, but try to, so I can reiterate that so that people know kind of where we were talking is, and I have probably mentioned this in the past. So this is a problem that I see. So we and Andrew were kind of talking about the fact that, we have in Canada, our history, our heritage predominantly, and it depends on what part of the geography, what province you live in. But here on the East Coast, on the Atlantic coast where I am, so it's predominantly, so Nova Scotia is New Scotland. So it's predominantly a lot of Scottish people that emigrated, came across the pond, and they landed over there in Nova Scotia, and they set up New Scotland. Same with the Newfoundland. So that would be been predominantly the people from the Irish background. And then here in New Brunswick, everywhere you go, it's like named after, basically Little Britain everywhere. Like there's little parts of the UK dotted all over the New Brunswick in terms of the labels that they put on. So, and then if you go further inwards, well, then you got the French in Quebec, and then of course you got you got like Ukrainians, you got the Germans, you got the people from the Netherlands, you got all kinds of people that settled all across this land, and they chose to set up and go to their own ways, right? But predominantly, the big difference that I said was saying to Andrew is, and Americans, that's another thing too, is Americans, the founding fathers of America, a lot of people did the exact same thing. Matter of fact, they just, instead of landing on Newfoundland, they landed in Boston or down in New York, right? But basically, we share a lot of common heritage and ancestry with our American counterparts. Matter of fact, a lot of them, if you followed the tree right back far enough, the branches far enough back, you'd find that we probably have distant relatives between us, Canadians and Americans. But the big distinguishable difference that as I grew up and consumed a tremendous amount of American culture, as well as most of the Canadians in my peer group. So I'm a Gen Xer, and yeah, we were basically latchkey kids, which I'm grateful for. But the TV basically raised us, and most of that TV was American culture. And the big thing about American culture is that American exceptionalism, and they were founded on, and a lot of their movies reflect that, like your Bravehearts, right? Your Gladiators, is fuck you to the ruling class, right? Like, fuck you, man. Like that is literally the American mindset. That was, and if you read the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers, both of them, you find out there was a lot of bantering back and forth, but there was actually some of them who you would probably have considered an anarchist, right? But they realized, well, we have to have something. So what they determined is, yeah, we don't need no rulers, but we're going to set up what we call the night watchman state, and we're going to enshrine with all these amendments and make it so it's almost perfect that, yeah, First Amendment is I can say and speak how I want and practice whatever religion I want. I can do all this stuff, but how am I going to defend those rights? Well, that's what the Second Amendment is for. And it literally says it, right, is to defend yourself from not just threats from abroad, but even from your own government. People, ooh, I know the Canadians. It's like, oh my God, how dare you? It's like, well, yeah, because, people that go into positions to be rulers and want to rule over people, yeah, they tend to have a tendency of getting quite tyrannical. And Exhibit A10, whatever the hell you want to call it, would have been the invocation of the Emergency Act. But the American mindset, once again, was not just of exceptionalism, but the idea of liberty itself. It was not based or founded upon. Now, most of the people that did settle those countries were very white, just like us. Like I say, shared a lot of the common ancestry. But the idea of America was that it's about that individual liberty. Now, I'll admit and acknowledge, just for those who will say, oh, they had slaves. And well, yes, it wasn't perfect by any stretch. I admit that, folks. Once again, humans are fallible, but the idea at the very least, and to continue to grow. And once again, you see how that kind of played out. Now, and the idea was individual liberty and fuck rulers, right? That was the pretense, basically the proverbial rebel mindset. Now, Canada, our beginnings kind of much more humble, much more humble, because not only did we keep the monarch, we actually doubled down and said, yeah, we like rulers so much, let's have redundant layers of that. So not just the monarch, but actually we want to have a parliamentary democracy, and not just a parliamentary democracy, but one just like our folks from across the pond, which is built on a first past the post system, where literally you could just get 32% of the vote tally of just those who decide to vote. So really you could be into the high teens and low 20s in terms of who can become the majority of the mob and rule over the rest of us. And we've seen how that has played out. But to me, that I'm going to give you time there, Andrew, to respond to that. But to me, that is the big distinguishing difference for me as a Canadian, is the idea of America is the idea of individual liberty. And it's, you see it today. It's reared its ugly head again, and I'm glad to see it. Right, that people are like, "Fuck this again," right? And that's what Trump is supposed to represent now today. Now I get it; they're picking another ruler but basically they want the bull in the china shop to show the establishment, "Fuck you guys." So that's what they're doing. Whereas in Canada, like I say, not only are we not having that, but it just seems like a lot of my fellow Canadians are wanting to double down on looking to the state for their morality, for their ethics, for what's right and wrong. And that to me is quite disturbing. But anyways, what's your response to some of what I've had to say there, Andrew?
So I think there's always going to be a ruler of some sort, and it depends on who and what they are. Right now, I think our rulers and I would call it an oligarchy, oleopathy. we've got a group of people that are not only incompetent, but they're evil.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. The other problem is there's no challenge to them, because anytime there is a challenge, they are swiftly, generally kicked out of Canada. They're sent down to the States, and anyone that could possibly form a challenge is basically either contained or moved out. And it's a problem with us in Canada, because the CPC, the Conservative Party of Canada, they're not effectively mounting challenge. Their whole goal is, let's go back to Harper age mentality. Let's do 200,000 immigrants per year. Let's just build more houses faster. And we're not even just doing 200,000. It's, if we build enough houses, we're going to have more people. Is that really what we want for Canada? The problem that I have with libertarianism is there's always going to be some ruler. And I'd rather have a competent ruler that maybe is wielding power and protecting his or their people, rather than a group of people that are incompetent or evil or just leave us alone. Because I don't think that there is a point where we get left alone. I don't think that's unfortunately going to work.
Right. Well, I will just say, Andrew, in terms of that, first and foremost, I always like to say, now you can speak however you want, but if I were you, I would probably at least try to hold off on saying we're always going to have rulers, because, I mean, either we get wiped out or humans get beyond that point. I just can't imagine that the human mind can continue to develop and evolve and still believe in having rulers. Now, we'll still have something in terms of, like, there has to, obviously, in any society, there has to be ways to arbitrate disputes. There has to be laws. There has to be, coherent ways of understanding these things. There have to be, like, some kind of a police. These are things. So I think we both would agree that there's never going to be a point in time where there's no such thing as some kind of structure, right? There's going to be a structure of some sort, just like in my family, right? In my family, there are rules. And we all have to abide by them. Just like I use this example all the time. We sit down and play a board game. We all agree to play the board game, but the only reason why we'll do so is because everybody got to follow the same rules. The minute somebody says, "Oh, wait now, those rules are for you, but I got my own set of rules right here," it's like, okay, I'm not playing game with this fucker, right? Because I'll never win in that game. So I get what you're saying, but I just like human beings used to believe in slavery in the past, because that's just the way it was. It always was. But you would be hard pressed even to find the status and the collectivists in our country, Canada today, who would say, yeah, slavery is good, right? Because not all it takes is enough generations going forward and kind of horizontal enforcement from top and even out from peer groups to the point where it's just not acceptable in a culture. So I don't believe we'll have rulers forever, but I agree that there's always going to be some way that you're going to have a structure in your society, right? So I get that. But like I say, the big thing with Canada that I see, and the major difference is, now Trump, yes, he technically he would be their ruler, because he's the president. He's the one that gets to make the rules. The plebs are the ones that have to follow him. So technically, but the American mindset, at least for 70 plus million of them anyways, they're like, well, we're going to give this fucking guy, basically they're saying somebody's going to have to do something here, and we're going to try doing it the right way. But by the fuck, like, I'm pretty sure, like, Trump would be he'd probably be more fearful to go around some of those really deep red districts, right? and act like he's the ruler. Now he could play with them and pretend that he's on their side, but there's a lot of Americans with that Second Amendment that you don't want to come across as a ruler. Whereas in Canada, and the way Trudeau, and not just Trudeau, but his minions and even some of his very effeminate counterparts in government, they walk around. I mean, that little guy that looked like the Muppet, man. What the hell was that guy's name? Omar Gobra, blah, blah, whatever the hell his name was.
Omegar?
Whatever.
Algebra, something
man,
like that.
That guy would have had to hid if he was in any of the deep red states or places like Florida, the way he went around, or someone like Trudeau, the way they went around pumping their fucking chest. Because that's the thing about the American mindset, is they have that different mindset where they do have to vote for a ruler. They are living on a modern plantation, so to speak, but they have a different mindset. And that's the thing with Canadians, what disturbs me is I actually work in the construction trade. I actually work for a paving company. I actually build roads and all that stuff. So yeah, but I see even full grown Canadians, I won't say, but especially during COVID and even with anything the government says, they're so docile and so conformist. And these are men that you wouldn't expect to be. But once again, we live in a country with a completely different culture. Now, if you get out into the sticks where I live in the woods, then you can find a little bit more of that testosterone. Then you can find some of those guys that actually have the big grizzly beards and are like, fuck anybody kind of deal, right? But there's like I say, a sizable portion of our fellow Canadian population and men in particular that, yeah, man, they couldn't inspire paint to dry. And I tell you, they kind of sicken me when I think about it, because I mean, it's not like I'm the biggest, strongest man on the planet, but I at least have the courage on my convictions, and I can speak out, which is more than I can say for a large percentage of them. And COVID proved that beyond a shadow of doubt. And it was quite disturbing for me to actually see that.
Well, I think it also proved it, unfortunately, for the States too, because were there any armed revolutions in the States over COVID? Because there were places in the States, and I know some places were not as bad, but there were a lot of places that were just not as bad as Ontario or a lot of Canada. Ontario was really bad, but they didn't have an armed resurrection over COVID policies. Not saying that they should have or anything. I'm not Fed posting for anyone watching. But there wasn't any, like, it was kind of just, okay, we're going to go along with it. And people were upset, but there wasn't anything. And it's kind of, I'm not just saying this to be like mean to the right wing, because the same thing kind of has happened with Trump winning. With Trump winning, there were so many Democrats that were, oh, Trump is going to be Hitler. Trump is going to be Hitler. And then he was elected, and nothing. They've got nothing right now. And not to say that I don't think they're trying to do something, but it just is like they have nothing to go on right now. They said he was Hitler, and then they just let Hitler take power. The other thing I would say with Trump, I think there are a lot of people that really do want him to be a leader. Like, I don't know if you saw his tweet yesterday. No, it was on Valentine's. Was it on Valentine's Day? It might have been the day after Valentine's Day. He posted a quote of Napoleon saying, "He who breaks the law to save his country is absolved of that breaking." Like, he can break the law if he saves his country. Which is,
I did see that. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
I mean, I think you'd find a lot of people saying yes, especially when you find USAID, AID, and doing. And I go, this is the American, but it's going to connect because Canada's doing the same thing. We're doing. There's tons of foreign funding programs. And I name myself after Anti-Hate Canada, because they are just a government-funded propagandist network. Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
But they still get money. Even if the Conservatives are in power, what are they going to get? More money. Because even if they call Pierre Poilievre a racist, is he going to defund them?
No.
Probably not. And it's the question of who is actually challenging the power and what do people want. I think that we're moving past a democratic moment, because I think that we've had where this end of history, this last man people is really failing, and we're moving into something that's going to become post-liberal or post-democracy, something that's going to be past that. And to your point about maybe not having people, the only way, not having rulers or hierarchy, the only thing I could see about that would, the way that we ended slavery, which it's not great to say, but it was technological advancement. It became unfeasible for them to keep slaves because not just the moral, because there was a moral component, but it also became technologically inferior to keep slaves, which made it economically inferior. But there was a moral component. Don't get me wrong, there was. But I could see it only if we, for somehow, follow the accelerationist or the NRX type of posting, which like Nick Land or things like that, which say, let's just let the AI overlords take us. Let's do the techno-human route where we have these techno AI things controlling us. And that to me is more worrying. Even though I agree with a lot what Nick Land says or other things like that, I don't like that future. That future sounds terrible and horrific to me.
Yeah.
But I don't see another way of having no rulers, because humans always have conflict.
Well, this is the thing, right? And I was I don't know if it was during this part or when we were actually behind the scenes, because it wasn't actually live at the time. But like I say, so of course I raised my sons. I have 2 boys, and of course I have a extended family and my wife and all that. But there's no rulers here, right? So that's the thing. So we do it actually in our own lives, although some people do use the heavy hand with their children. I never did. I just led by example. I was firm but fair, raised my voice, when needed or whatever, but I didn't have to beat or spank my sons or anything like that. So I'm actual proof, and there's lots of examples where there's proof where you actually can have, right, this thing. Now, what I will say is there's always going to be threats to us. So I think that's the best way to look at it is, whether there's going to be rulers for humans, because we are all fallible, whether it's from the robots or AI or just our other fallible human beings, and some of them that can be quite fucking evil, right? There's always going to be threats to it. That is something that I agree with, and I think every libertarian I've ever talked to will always agree, whether they're the minarchist or a full-on anarchist or anywhere in between, is yes, there are always going to be threats from externalities and other people or other groups. That's a reality. But to me, knowing that is that if I know there's going to be a threat, well, then to me, I have to be the one, right? Well, just like right now, if someone tried to break into my house, I could call the cops, but where I live, it'd be a half hour before they get here. So really, what's going to protect me? People say, well, we need the state to protect you from bad things. Well, like I say, if someone meant to do harm to me right now, and the cops are a half hour away at best, as a matter of fact, we're having a snowstorm today, so it might be even longer than that. But at best, the thing that's going to protect my family is me and anyone else in my family that's willing to, defend themselves or pick up arms to do so. That is really what it is in the day, is you need a citizenry. And the Swiss people know this, right? The Americans understand this, especially the ones that are big time constitutionalists, deeply read Republican or genuinely libertarian, is yes, there's always going to be threats. So we're all going to have a way to protect ourselves. And actually, that's the thing, even for myself. I'm the kind of person, and that's why I like identifying as a libertarian, because it's more conducive with my personality, is I like to walk softly, but I carry a big stick. So I never go looking for trouble. But if it fucking finds me, I am the kind of guy that and I've won fights, I've lost fights, right? But you're not coming back for more. That's even if you win, you're not going to want to come back from that's. So to me, and once again, it has nothing to do with being, forceful towards people or anything. It's just have the ability and the willingness to protect and defend yourself. And that to me is the best path forward, and that's the mindset where Canadians need to be in, because if there were enough Canadians that had that mindset and were even at least willing to just growl, even if you're not willing to show your teeth, just growl, there wouldn't be a Harper, Harper, Higgs, Trudeau, I don't know all these premiers, Kenny at the time, whoever they were, they wouldn't have never had the fucking courage, they would have never had the balls to do what they did, because they would realize that massively outnumbered. Now, the problem with what I see is in terms of governance, the structure we have now, it's a belief system, man. And you know what? Trudeau's not a threat. Trudeau by himself with his little fucking socks and his very effeminate fucking mass physique where he almost looks like an adolescent male. I'm not worried about that guy. But, the thousands of mindless order followers that believe in him and believe in whatever he says, right? That's that collectivism right there, rearing its ugly head. That is the true threat. It's the belief in authority. It's not to suggest that we can have authority, but man, the minute you're going to believe in that authority, well, then you turned yourself into basically a sacrificial animal, or even not yourself, but if everyone else in your peer group or most people in your peer group believe in having rulers, you have to, they actually will tell you have to subjugate yourself to that ruler, because if it's written down on parchment or paper on a computer screen, to them, the law is just, that means everything to them. And that to me is the mindset. Liberty begins as a mindset. And if you have the mindset of a free human being, then you can navigate the rest of the world, all the threats and all the perils that come with it, whether from states or individual actors. And that to me is the big thing, and why I can't say that it defines me as a Canadian, because I find, I'm not saying that there aren't Canadians. There are definitely a lot of Canadians who share my mindset, but man, there's a very sizable portion of them, I would say, that outnumber us. Luckily, they're quite weak and inept. That's one good thing about the ruling class these days, is they're quite weak and inept, thankfully so. But that to me is the big difference. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. But then I want to, after you want to talk about that, I want to talk about the whole thing with the Trump there in terms of what he's doing, because I've got lots to say about that. But what are your thoughts on what I'm saying there already there?
So I think that one of the issues I have is, one, I think we need institutions that are outside of the government. And I think this is one thing that is a failing of liberalism in general. It's where the Quiet Revolution really came into effect, where everything just was, let's put everything into the state and everything is controlled by the state. And we don't have anything controlled like education. We don't have unions, media, journalism, business, everything. And if you might say, oh, but our business, if you look into subsidies, you'll find that a lot of businesses are being subsidized quite heavily. You'll find education. It's all of it stems back to being power structures that are state controlled. If you look, and I know more about Quebec because just I've been reading a bit more about them, not that I'm from there, but they had, the education system was controlled by the Roman Catholic Church until the 60s, and then they they pulled away from it after request from the government. They pulled away from doing healthcare. And a lot of places, healthcare was done by the church. Charity generally was done by the church. Now that's just a patron network for liberals. That's just, well, we'll give you money so long as you vote for us. We need to set up systems that are patron networks outside of the government, that doesn't rely on the government, that can then say, if the government says, no, you need to lock down, no, you have no power over us, go away, you have no power over us. And that's mostly just power and elite theory that I'm regurgitating probably poorly. But the other thing I would say is, we need to figure out who we are as a people. And I think that's one issue that we have is, I don't think Canadians right now are a very moral people. And I don't think that general libertarianism or liberalism has been a moral benefit for most people. I think it's been a moral detriment. In history, generally, the way you unite people, you bring them together, is through a ruler or through some shared community messaging or something like that.
Well, I would just say in terms of the libertarian, now liberal, because the liberal canon has different principles. They're somewhat similar in certain ways, but libertarian, the one thing about libertarian, the philosophy of liberty, is it actually has baked in, and it's really easy. That's why I definitely prefer the libertarian philosophy, the philosophy of liberty, than liberalism, because liberalism does leave room for collectivism and shit, even though it does seem to promote the individual and it allows for a lot of hedonism. But the thing with libertarians is self-ownership, property rights, and the non-aggression principle. So the non-aggression principle combined with property rights basically all but eliminates the things. As a matter of fact, they very closely aligned. So I come from a Christian background, and my grandmother was great and instrumental in giving me some of those great teachings. It took me to church and Sunday school when I was a kid stuff, and I appreciate some of the great things I learned. Didn't care much because the church can be very collectivist it's people in large numbers, right? And everyone wants to interpret things their own way. But the one thing about libertarians, and the reason why to me it's easy to be a libertarian as a Christian, is because the values line up. Now, there are some areas, right, whereas libertarians allow for things where there's no coercion involved. So let's say gambling or prostitution. Now, Christians would definitely agree that gambling and prostitution are sins and not something you should do. But even if you read the New Bible or the New Testament, so that's the thing. I kind of reject the Old Testament. I like the New Testament and everything that's based on basically Jesus Christ and the teachings of Jesus Christ. So to me, it's, yes, these are bad things, and you definitely want to try to make it so that it's not something that people would find acceptable. And that's where ostracism is excellent. Actually, ostracism is completely conducive with Christian values and with the libertarian ethics as well. So, but it allows for people to still make the mistakes and to sin, because that's the thing. Even Christianity says that, the sin. Now, it's up to God to judge the sinner, right? Now, as long as that person is not doing or using force or coercion or harm on someone else. And now, You can't see, that's the thing. Now, when kids are into the equation, because kids aren't fully developed, the brain stuff, well, then you are, even if you're not doing, like, you can't say, oh, a kid allowed me to have sex with them, right? Even if the kid said yes, because no, that's still coercion, because that kid hasn't had a brain develop enough that they can actually formulate and think of these thoughts properly to give you enough. So actually, I think libertarian philosophy and Christian ethics, which are the things that made me a much better person that I could have been, and the people that I surround myself, that those are the things that have helped me out tremendously. But it's never come to me. I've never used the state. Oh, what happened here? I'm sure he'll be back there, but actually, before I do, maybe he just had a bad connection, so I don't want to continue on without him being present there. But let me just cruise on over to the chat here, and we'll see what's going on. They want it all on paper. Apathy. Alberta saying no. Yeah. This guy's okay. Hold on here. Canadian Mounties. Canadian Mounties. He thinks parties are for democratia. Democratia. Anyways, okay. Adolf or Austria voted Adolf in with an oh, there you go, right? Oh, there he's back there, folks. There he's back. Just one sec there. Oh, okay. Let me add the stage there. You still there now, Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, my thing crashed for a second there.
Oh, that's all good. It's all good, buddy. No worries. No worries. Anyways, so basically, I guess to summarize, basically what I was saying is libertarians and Christians, and that's why I find them both so conducive with each other, is actually it's a baseline formula. It's not perfect, but here's the thing. If you found yourself on an island, I like to use the old island experiment, right? What was that movie? Remember back in the day? Fuck, I can't remember. Lord of the Flies. I think. Yeah. But anyways, if you found yourself on an island, right, and if you had, those Christian ethics and the libertarian values, and not even for this is the thing. I think most people, you'd always have the exception, of course, that might try to get around them, but most people will adopt them values, and not even for altruistic reasons. Because we as humans we have rational self-interest, right? We all want to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Well, that's every strategy for every being that's ever survived, right? That's how a species continues to evolve and to adapt, is they have to be able to continue their bloodline. So it's in every human being's best interest to try to get through life as best they can without being harmed and injured and all that stuff. So most people, even if they're not doing it out of benevolence, they'll not steal your shit and not try to harm you because they're scared that you might do it to them. But what the state does, this is the problem where the state enters in. I think it does the exact opposite for society. Is the state now, we can all offload that personal responsibility of defending ourselves and our neighbor and the people that need defending from the tyrants, because tyrants are always going to exist. But now we offload that responsibility to this thing we call the state, that we give all of the power and all of the belief that they now have the authority. So it's not even that they have the power. It's now they have that authority because people believe that they have that authority. That's, I think, the minute that humanity is in trouble, and there's perilous and precarious dangers at every corner, because now you've subjected yourself to someone who now they can not only just like Lysander Spooner, right? The highwayman, at least he's got to follow you and he's got to take that risk himself, that thief, that robber, right? Whereas the state, they can just make you believe that you have to conform them. They might not even have to send the cops out. You might just go surrender, right? Because you would perceive that you've done something wrong, even if you haven't, right? So let's say a drug crime law or something like that. But anyways, just because I know I've been kind of going on there, what are your thoughts in terms of what I'm saying so far, Andrew?
My problem being that I think there will always be a ruler that determines the state of exception. That's I think it's Schmidt. I think that's from Schmidt. But there's someone that's going to determine the state of exception in which that is to play, and that's what Trump was saying with his Napoleon Bonaparte posting on Twitter.
Right.
I think that we have to figure out like what the ruling class right now. And you were talking about a little bit earlier, and I don't think we're on stream, unfortunately, but with. Mm-hmm. But you talked about it a little bit. The ruling class, what is their religion right now? Their religion isn't Christian. Their religion is a secular humanism that basically says, I will sacrifice everything around me. And of course, if you're being Machiavellian about it, you always sacrifice everything else to give the appearance of being liberal.
Yeah.
As in liberal, that's someone that gives away stuff.
Yep.
You sacrifice everything, my business, whatever it is, I will sacrifice all of it, my children, so as to gain the affection and the high status virtue signaling that is currently the high status thing.
Right. Yeah.
I don't that's the problem. And what is it to be low status? To be Christian is to be low status now. Like, if you're pro-life, if you're anti-maid, if you're any of the above things, it's low status to be those things. It's high status to be pro-residential school burning, or Catholic church burnings, or Christian church generally, to burn all those churches. It's that, and that to me shows, like, and I know I are somewhat backwards saying that I wish that there was a more central power that was not incompetent and evil, but we need to find a way to change the idea. And I think that really we could, because I don't have as much time, that much time left.
Okay.
Because I'm running a little bit low on like battery. I've got to go do something else. But
Okay.
what would identity, I think, would be a great way. Like, I think that identity for a Canadian generally should be someone that has a connection to the past of Canada, being a settler. There needs to be a clear distinction between someone that has a past connection to a settler, someone that has gone and forged a new place, set up a society in these places, in comparison to people that came to Toronto yesterday and bought a condo. Like that those are two very different people. That's two very different commitments to Canada.
Right.
And I'm not saying that has to be that. I think it should, that ethnicity can be a play in that. It doesn't need to be the only play. I think that there should be some pathways in which people can get into this club that we call Canadian, like, for example, marriage. But I think it should be a slow process of assimilation. And I think the liberal idea has been that assimilation is really bad, but I don't think that there is any way forward other than through assimilation of some regard.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. And actually, if we could just, at least, there's just two things I wanted to cover. So let me deal with that first and foremost. But the other thing I want to talk about is because the identity thing is something, because that's kind of the importance of what we were talking about. But like I was even mentioned, I think it was before we actually went live. So even in my own family, right? So, and I love my family dearly, especially, well, the ones that I do. But that's the thing, because I've got a pretty good sized family. I don't love every one of them equally, right? Some of them have actually done me quite wrong, to be honest with you. And I really don't care much about them at all, to be honest with you. And I think most people have that in their lives. So this is the problem with getting into whether it's the Canadian identity, or even, as, let's say, my last name's Hunter, as being a hunter. It doesn't mean, now it does have meaning to me to a degree, right? Because there's a lot of heritage there for sure. And I mean, I do take great pride, but it's the pride that I take are those hunters that actually carried through with those good values that I respect and adhere to, or had that strength and that resolve and that content of their character that made them, that kind of a person, like that was an exception to just the knuckle draggers among us. So to me, there has to be, the identity can't be built just on the fact that I'm Canadian per se. It has to be an idea of what that actually means as Canadian. And as you've kind of pointed out, and actually how this country is unfolded, what is Canadian? I mean, it's so multicultural, really. What multicultural means is there is no culture. What you're really saying is there is no culture, because I lived in Toronto. I think I mentioned that before we went live. I lived in the East End, Scarborough. So on one side of me, on Danzig, that's where they had that big shooting there, by the way. But anyways, it was Jamaica Central. It was all Jamaican people, just
The Danforth, that one?
No, Danzig on the East End. I know Danforth. No, Danforth's closer to downtown Toronto. I'm talking on further east. But anyways, Danzig. So on, like I say, if I went to the two little small buildings, and it was the ghetto-y kind of part of the Scarborough. But if you went to one side, it was like I say, Jamaica Central. If you went to there was two 10-story buildings beside us, and they referenced them. I'm not saying it's a great way to say things, but they used to be called Packy Palace. And why? Because it was predominantly people who were Indian or Pakistan descent. But there was very, very minimal in terms of, and none of us, that's the thing. When I grew up in the 80s, there wasn't even much there was no hostility. I didn't see like the white people going to bother the brown people or the black people coming to bother. There was some intermingling. Most of them intermingling when I grew up was actually white guys that thought we called them wiggers. Right? They acted like they were black dudes, right? They tried to basically emulate. But other than that, those were the only times that people were intermingling. So you either had to adopt someone else's culture, but there wasn't much in terms of a cohesive culture. And that was just a matter of a few city blocks. But you could replicate that. And you were saying Danforth. Well, if you go Danforth, Pape, Donlands, all the way down, you got Little Italy, you got Little Greece, so really, it's and predominantly there is some cross-pollination, mind you, but this country seems to be more conducive with siloing everyone rather than creating anything that would be resembling a culture. Whereas America, the culture is the idea of the Constitution for the most part. Oh, I think he lost his maybe his battery's getting low. Actually, I will just go look through a few more of the comments. If he gets a chance to come back here. Like I said, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. And then I want to bring up the fact about Trump, and I might end up having to just say it with you guys. But yeah, I got lost to say in terms of the power dynamic, because as a libertarian, I'm a realist, right? I realize that power exists. And I keep pointing out to people all the time, like I say, well, at least the leftists, I mean, a lot of theirs is rhetoric or trying to shut you down, but they're not in terms of big, strong physical beings that you need to be threatened of their physical prowess or intimidated in that way, right? Whereas the right wingers, right, their opponents, right, when you play the left-right game, those are the people that would typically be representative of the big, strong guy, and maybe the brash, a little bit more abrasive kind of a guy, right? And that's, to me, it's like, I as a libertarian, I'm saying, hey, don't give either of these fuckers the power. Don't give either of these fuckers the authority. But since the people who on the left, right, have been playing the political power game, waving that big proverbial gun in the room, pointing it at everybody and trying to micromanage, control every aspect of their social and economic lives. Well, what I've been saying for a while is, hey, you really should fucking be careful, because if that right winger gets access to that proverbial gun in the room, well, you fuckers are in a lot of trouble. And what we're seeing today is, the liberals, the lefties, the progressives, I should call them, the collectivists, they're seeing, right? Because that's the thing. There's collective hordes on both sides, right? So that's what I mean. So now you got the right-wing collectivists. Well, like I say, and these are people, they got all the guns, right? Actually, they even got a little bit more brains from what I can gather, seemingly these days, right? And they have the physical prowess as well. So it's like, hey, you lefties, I've been trying to tell you guys for fucking ever, stop going around poking bears, because one of these days that bear gonna look back, growl at you, and maybe he'd be hungry. Might have poked him on a bad day. Maybe he hasn't eaten. Maybe he was hibernating for a few months, right? Bad idea. And that's what I've been basically trying to tell people is, yes, of course, power is always going to exist. I've never doubted that, and I don't doubt it that that's going to be the case for the future. Well, who knows? Anything can change, I guess. So I can be optimistic in some small regard. But yes, power does exist. And what we libertarians are saying is, listen, put down the proverbial guns in the room. Let's use our words. But make no mistake, if people are unwilling to use their words, right? I'm not fucking running anywhere. I that's like a lot of us, right? And people keep saying, well, just leave, man, just leave. It's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. This is where my family is. This is where my heritage is. This is my plot of land. Matter of fact, where I live, most people in this place share my last name. So no, I'm not going anywhere. Nope. Right. So what I'm saying is, well, if you're not going to leave, if you're not going to flee, and you don't want to use your words, what the hell's left? Right? What's left? You're leaving people, you're backing people in the corner, and the only thing they'll have to do, just like the fucking rat that you back in the corner, right? What do you like? To me, I'm just saying, stop backing rats in corners. Don't poke bears, and we'll be able to get along a lot better. It's never going to be perfect. That's for fucking sure. But it's really, really dumb idea to poke the proverbial bears. What I guess kind of if I could summarize my thoughts up in a sentence, that'd be what I'm saying. Anyways, it doesn't look like my man's going to make it back here. Anyways, it's all good. We'll just keep on rolling there. But I will just mention, because we didn't get a chance because we weren't live streaming. I really apologize for that. As a matter of fact, If you get a chance to see this Anti-Hatred Network, we can do this again at some point in time in the future if you want. But anyway, so this whole thing, let me bring up. Is it still on here? The tab's still up. Oh, let me bring the tab on. Add to the stage. Bring that up here. Oh, wait, now I actually better shrink it because then you folks won't be able to see it that way, right? Okay, so this was the original tweet. This was that Daniel Tyree, that PPC guy that put out there. And any positive vision. So he was replying to Greg Wyclef. Shout out to Greg Wyclef. He put out some great content as well. GD Dub. At GD Dub on X. Anyways, so there's no vision for Canada's future. And I think his video, 3 minutes, 44 seconds, it was a pretty good video. So I definitely recommend you check it as well. Anyways, and Daniel Tyree, like say the PPC guy, any positive vision for Canada's future must start with embracing Canada as a people, not an idea. As a people, not an idea. It must understand that Canadians are fundamentally a collectivist people and that government must be wielded for the common good, not undermined and shrank down. So this guy, like I say, well, once again, he's not with the PPC anymore. I acknowledge that, but this is definitely the mindset of a lot of the PPC people and why you see me and them have a massive divergence. And we're to the point where I still have a decent relationship and I talk with probably a couple dozen people, right, that we've kept good, close ties and relationship with. And there's some really great people, don't get me wrong, some really great people that were members and supporters and candidates within the PPC. But the leadership, the people that had the vision of the PPC, yeah, well, I should have known the People's Party of Canada, right? I should have known, but I thought, well, that's the thing. Everyone tried to tell me, hey, Maxime, man, he's libertarian leaning, right? So, well, libertarians aren't collectivists. Matter of fact, a libertarian and a collectivist is like North Pole and South Pole, like they're opposing forces. So, no, they exactly opposite of each other. So like I say, but anyways, as you see, there you have it. Black and white folks, PPC is collectivist in nature, not interested in shrinking the size and scope of big government. They only seek to wield power like every other establishment. And that's the thing for collectivists, you or I at the individual level, we're just pawns on the chessboard. We're just gears in the machine. We're expendable, right? And I'm not a big fan of people looking at me as just basically a sacrificial lamb for their concept of the greater good. Anyways, I see Andrew made it back. What's going on, my friend? Hey, Andrew, you still there, buddy? Oh, Andrew. You got a copy there, Andrew? I see you're there, but not getting any sound.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hello?
One second, if you can hear me.
Okay. No, I can't hear you. No. Anyways, while Andrew's figuring that out, I'm just going to keep going on because I definitely wanted to cover this part of it. So anyway, so that was the thing. And then this is where actually me and Andrew, I believe, I'm not PBC, you libertarian numpty. Not anymore. Yeah, I had to show him, like, what a guy. Typical. Look, not PBC. Well, you were. Like, fucking sound just like some of them fucking lefty libtards, right? Like just fucking gaslighting and pretend like the up is down and in is out and black is white. Anyways, you got a copy there, Andrew?
Yeah, I got you now.
Oh, okay, right on. Awesome. Anyways, I was just I just brought up our the exchange there, and I was just going to kind of go through that while we were waiting. But yeah, that's all. No, it's all good, man. But let me just I just want to reiterate in case you didn't get a chance to see that, because there was one thing that I would, in addition to the identity thing, that I wanted to point out, and I wanted you to hear as well, but you lost a connection there, is so as a libertarian, so like I say, I prefer the rules of engagement to be, we use our words, right? That's how we do it. Just like I say, even in competitive sports, I like competition. I love it, but let's leave the fisticuffs and keep the proverbial gun in the holster, right? So that's my thing. But acknowledging that power, like you say, power does exist. It's going to exist. It's not going to cease to exist anytime soon, is what I've been saying. And I've been trying to warn my lefty counterparts for years, because I think actually when I was younger in particular, I would have been probably someone who would have said I was liberal. So when I hear people that identify as liberal these days, although they don't sound very liberal, that's the fucking crazy part, is they distort the words beyond the meaning. But anyways, but I've been trying to warn the people on the left, these collectivists on the left, just like I like to use analogies. So I think of the left, I think of we've all seen the video. Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us have probably seen that video scrolling by. Not that we were looking for it or anything. Where there's countless examples where this chick, 5 foot nothing, is smacking her man around like he's maybe 6'5", great big fucking beast of a dude, right? And he smacks him, right? And he's like, "Hey, baby, what do you know what I mean?" And she just keeps smacking the fucking guy. And it's like, to me, like I said, I've mentioned before, I'm a fairly rugged dude. I can handle myself, but I don't go out in the woods and poke fucking bears for a living, right? I'm not stupid. Like, there's a difference between bravery and stupidity. But what I see the left, what they represent is they like to keep fucking poking bears, right? It's like, what the hell? And just like the chick that's slapping the guy around. It's like, that guy could fucking knock you into next week, right? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? And that's basically what I see is the Trump today. Now, luckily, Trump ain't that bad. Trump isn't fucking Hitler, to be honest with you. So, of course, the emotional irrationalness of the left, which very conducive with that feminist mindset, that feminist position that seems to dominate a lot of the male liberals these days, which is weird. Like, they got to get a lot more testosterone in your body, boys. Okay. Something fucking going on. Lay off the soy. I don't know what it is, but what I've been trying to say is for these people who want to go, tyrannical on the right wing when they had the gun, they had control of the state, right? To me, well, the state, as we all acknowledge, the state is force. The state is violence. The state is coercion. The state is... Well, you guys have been fucking around. Well, now now in the States, right? In America. Well, now who's waving the power around, right? Now who's waving the proverbial gun in the room around and doing whatever the hell he damn well wants. Now, like I say, at this point in time, there's no big giant revolution or violent conflicts. But you're seeing the reaction of the left, who were all about, this is what I point out, and I would say this to anybody, whether you're talking about in your family, your community, or at the state level, or the province or the country, is waving that gun around. At some fucking point in time, you eventually come across someone, it's a real bad idea to wave the gun at them, because they might turn around, get possession of that gun, and now turn it at you, except now, not only they got possession of that gun and point at you, now they remember, oh, you were fucking using that gun to fuck with me for all this amount of time. Now it's probably a bad idea, because now that person might have some vengeance, right? Might be a little bit vengeful, might want to actually get back at you for all the shit you did to them. And that's what I've been trying to warn the left in this country for a long time, but it seems like nobody wants to listen. Everyone wants to play like it's like some team sport in terms of, the Canadians versus the Maple Leafs. But no, this is the real world. This is, when you're talking about the state, you're talking about violence. And at some point in time, even though it hasn't happened yet, waving that big, gigantic proverbial gun in the room all the time and pointing at other people and threaten them constantly, the chicks eventually come home to roost, and it's going to bite you in the proverbial ass. Anyways, what are your thoughts on that stuff there? Hello?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go, Andrew. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
In terms of the that's the thing. I think we have to remember that there was no neutral state where we're playing with history. Like, there has been history. The other thing being that the whole point of politics is to reward your friends and punish your enemies. And that's one of my issues with the Conservative Party, is they punish their friends and reward their enemies. But in terms of what do we want to see forward, like, I don't think that liberty is helpful. And I think that, like, liberty is great when you have people that are well-ordered and moral people. But if you don't have morally well-ordered people, you're not going to have people that benefit from their liberty, right? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I notice you're getting quite quiet. Are you in a situation or something you got to pipe down?
Yeah, sorry. No, I've got my mic's not as good as the other one I was using. That one overheated.
Okay.
So I got.
Oh, really? Okay. But anyway, so just to continue on, I wanted to cover some of this stuff. So, because like I said, I wanted the people to see, and this is your anti-hate network. So in case you do get dropped or whatever, so people can at least know where they can find you. So anti-hatred network. And what does being Canadian mean to you as a libertarian? So then, other than love my healthcare, love my gays, not American, Canada's of course a people. So actually, the question was, what does it mean to be Canadian and as a libertarian. So to me, first and foremost, the libertarian is what it is that makes me a libertarian is because libertarian is based on the philosophy of liberty. So humans we've always had to use some kind of a mystical being as the arbiter of authority to take it out of the hands of fallible human beings, right? So, but then we found out monarchs, well, they found a get around. They found a hack for that. They just said that God spoke through them, right? So that kind of messed that situation. Whereas the people, who come up with the concept of God, well, at least it's an abstract. It's not in the physical realm, so we can kind of make it more conducive with that. It's applicable to more human beings. But we see, like I said, that humans can now use that as well. God's speaking through me, and they can use that as a means to do terrible things. The state, which is another religion now. So, like you said before when we were talking, most Canadians sadly have turned and pivoted away from Christianity. And I think the modern form of Christianity, especially post-Reformation, in terms of the New Testament and the story of Jesus Christ and that stuff, I think it was great. I think those meta narratives, I think the ethics and the edicts involved were great. But people now today have gravitated away from that because they want to be more scientific, right? They want to be more objective. And people are finding today that, well, that objective world, ethics is really difficult to try to come up with in an ethical or in the absence of a God or a deity. And we see that today because now God has been supplanted and substituted for the state, which is representative of other fallible human beings. And we see, well, that's the thing. The 20th century should have been enough for most people alive today, right? I mean, because it's not that long ago, 80 years, 85 years old. It should be enough in a people's mind, or at least enough people's mind that pass on this knowledge to their kids, hopefully, and their grandkids, to understand that, that idea of putting that much power or authority in other human beings. And when you consider how humans react and behave in large numbers, that's bad. That collectivism it can be, of course, it can be a force for good, right? And I see that, but the problem is what you do is the minute you've turned a person's mind into thinking that you're giving another human being authority, well, that's a state of mind that, like I say, it's not long before the totalitarian state is going to rear its ugly head, because now people are looking at each other as, a proverbial, not just a proverbial, an actual threat, because they recognize that the state is violent. So now it's like, well, I'm not letting you pick up the gun. I want the gun. So it's basically now it's that race to who's going to yield that power that you were speaking of. Whereas me, I want people to get to the point where there is no centralized power. We all have power within ourselves, and it's up to us at the individual level in conjunction with those ethics. And that's the thing about today is those ethics can be learned, and you don't have to turn towards mysticism anymore. Now, I still like to believe in God. Doesn't mean, like I say, I build engines. So trust me, I have to deal with the objective world, right? But you can even use things like Stefan Molyneux. I'm not sure if you heard of him before, but he's come up with his own modern form of secular ethics. So if you want to be more scientific or objective based in your thinking in terms of ethics, well, once again, these things are actually not that difficult and can be proven to be objectively true. So don't hit, don't steal. Now, you can universalize not hitting people and not stealing from people. We can all not steal from each other simultaneously, and it's fine. The minute we all want to steal from each other, well, that negates the idea of what theft even means. So that doesn't work. So these ethics are actually applicable in universal ways, but we as humans have not advanced or adopted or evolved far enough to make that as the premise for our authority. So in the meantime, in the interim, since we are going to have this authority, to me, the biggest thing is let's use that authority for the bare minimum purposes that's needed or necessary. So the night watchman state, that's where me and the minarchists are fellow travelers. I don't want no state at all, but I'm a fellow traveler with a minarchist that just wants to get the state back in its box to the point where it's just an arbitrary or a referee of sorts, but it has to follow the same rules that we do. The problem is we're so far removed from that today because most people are firm believers. And if you've ever had a conversation, I'm sure you have, with fellow Canadians, you can see it. It's like talking to, because I grew up in a Christian family. If I had said to my, Christian, or I had to walk up to the preacher, right, when I was a kid and said, I can point out these things in the Bible that's impossible, like the earth is not 6,000 years old, right? I would have been a blasphemy. They would have kicked me right out of the church because I'm challenging their orthodoxy. Well, that's the same with the statists today that are mostly atheists in nature. Stathius is what you call them, is now you're not talking about someone that's susceptible to listen to reason or logic. These are people who are dogmatic in their beliefs and will reject anything. Even if you point it out to their face, they will reject it because it's their religion aligns with how they can better benefit themselves and others. And that combination is a perilous threat. Anyways, I know I kind of went on a little bit of a filibuster
right.
there. What are your thoughts on that anyway?
So, two things. First thing being, in terms of what you were just saying, 30% of the population will not be able to be ruled the way that you're talking about. So they just won't be able to govern themselves. That's just the way it is. The other thing being that around what's it called? You had mentioned previously about Pierre Trudeau and his the multiculturalism. That was an invention by Pierre Trudeau during that time. And Canada was really for a long time just a bicultural nation, and that's a very different thing than multicultural per se. But that's what I've.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, it would have been easier, at least in a binary, just like with the U.S. As much as it sounds in theory, I've thought of this for years, like, because you got some of these places in Europe that have could have 15, 20 parties, right? And in Canada, we have 4 or 5 at least in terms of like the establishment parties. But actually, the one thing about a binary is it leaves you, now they do have a Libertarian Party in the U.S., but even the Libertarians Party, I'm friends with quite a few of them, and they'll even tell you, like, they don't expect they're going to form government anytime soon. They basically realize that they function under basically a binary system where it's either Republican or Democrat, which is why when they want to do things, they find some way to come together. Even the Libertarians, they plug their nose this time and supported Trump because they realize, well, he's the only game in town, and bare minimally, at least he's throwing us some bones in terms of Libertarians, in terms of shrinking the government. And Doge was a big seller. Helping getting Ross Ulbricht out of prison was a big seller for the Libertarians. So to them, the Libertarians, the practical minded, the more reasonable minded ones, I get it. Sometimes I can be a little bit high idealism and idealistic, and so can some of my counterparts. But you have to be pragmatic because we live in the real world. So it's nice to see that the Americans are at least finding a way. Like I say, they're using Trump as the proverbial bull in the china shop, but at the same time, they're probably at bare minimally now they're getting some of the things they wanted. So I'm not sure if you heard, but Trump even said no more federal funding for any of these, because I remember you were not a fan of the COVID fucking tyranny, and neither am I. That shit was terrible. I hate it. It made me sick, the kind of shit that people did to each other. But Trump at least said no more federal funding if you fucking got vaccine mandates in school, which is beautiful. Like, as a libertarian, like I say, I don't expect everything to ever go my way. I don't expect we're ever going to live in this utopian libertarian paradise or anything. But like, at the bare minimum, we're seeing that the mindset is still there in America, where it's like, well, first of all, poke power in the eyes, and after we're done poking power in the eyes for a while, right? Let's put this fucker back in the box as much as we can, because they recognize that, the loons on the other side might grab that fucking power again. So that, I think, is at least wise. It seems wise, at least the people now behind the scenes, and Trump seems to be susceptible to it, is do what needs to be done. He's got a short run, 4 years, get as much of that shit done. Reduced regulations, I think, is what, for everyone they bring forward, you got to get rid of 10 of them. Doge is trying to find like trillions of dollars of savings for the taxpayer. So do as much as you can in the time frame you have. And like I say, in the meantime, while you're doing that, set it up so the state has less power. Now, I don't know how that's going to work at the presidential level, because actually he's doing the opposite. At the presidential level, he's actually been expanding powers, and so has everyone else before him. All the way back to Bush, it's executive order, but now we're seeing like Obama went crazy on that stuff, but now it's just basically rule by eating. But at least at the state level and stuff, you're starting to see more decentralized and starting to at least unwind the bureaucracy. Because the thing about the figureheads like a Trump or like your Trudeaus, even in Canada, we recognize you can get fucking Trudeau, get rid of Trudeau, and you can put Poilievre. It doesn't matter that bureaucracy, that unelected bureaucracy, the policy wonks, whenever you go to any government service or building or anywhere, they're still there, right? And they still have that authoritarian mindset. So you're not getting rid of that. So I understand what everyone is at least trying to do. And the thing about the American is an experiment. It's an ongoing experiment. Well, we are fortunate because we got front row seat up here now. And I'm hoping in some way that we can try to emulate that. The only thing I'm seeing today, I want to get your opinion on this, Andrew, is Pierre Poilievre is one hell of a lackluster dude. I know he's trying his best with he's taking his glass off and putting his fucking whatever in his eyes there, the fucking things, and trying to wear tighter shirts and trying to act more manly. But I don't know. To me, the way he talks, he's very meek. You can tell he's almost everything he says, like, does this poll good? He doesn't, to me, and if we are the men, the true men of the North, the strong, the free, well, you're not inspiring any of us. I'll just speak as one of them men. This guy could not inspire paint to dry, never mind me to get brazenly behind him and support him in any way. I mean, at best, and I'll say this for the people who are like, well, you got to vote. Well, no, I don't have to actually. But at best, if I do, it would be to plug my nose and say, yeah, let's just at least get rid of the liberals. But I'd be under no fucking illusion, right? Matter of fact, more likely I'll probably just support a Libertarian Party candidate just because I realize it'd be a throwaway vote where I live anyways, in particular, but or at least the province. In my jurisdiction, maybe not, but the province, it would be almost a waste because of the way it works, like I say. But Pierre Poilievre is not inspiring, and I don't see him get there. And now he's even kind of parroting more Trudeau-esque talking points, which I think, in addition to people like myself, well, I'll even ask you, Andrew, is he doing anything to embolden you, or is it kind of disappointment as well?
Disappointment, but to be honest, I gotta head out. I'm sorry, I had some connection issues, but
okay.
All right, sorry, I gotta go.
Yeah, no problem, Andrew. No problem. Listen, if you ever want to do this again and you have a little more time, yeah, that's all good. It's all good, man. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure that at least we have this conversation and we can always have another one going forward. And even if we disagree, don't mind that. I don't mind disagreeing with someone as long as you come with good faith arguments. Like I say, I have no problem whatsoever because at the end of the day, it's just two guys talking to figure things out. But yeah, you go enjoy yourself, do what you're going to do. And I might just stay doing a little bit more of the streaming and we'll talk again sometime. Okay.
See you. Thanks. Bye.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You.
All right. I'm going to read some of the comments here, folks. Hey, what's going on, Goalie Ball? Goalie Ball's been going on a tirade there. Debt equals money and servitude. Yeah, well, yeah, debt's bad, man. Debt can be bad. Well, I mean, it can be good too. It depends, right? That's the thing. It's just like a gun. Well, you can use it for bad or you can use it for good. That's the thing. And yeah, I can be annoying like that because that's what I do. It's kind of my thing. It's kind of my shtick is I point out things. I point out blind spots. What I try to do as best I can, right? And I would agree with you in some way that debt, it can be very negative. Too much of it for sure. But, think about someone that wants to start a business, small business, and they need to take out a business loan or some way. But their idea is awesome. And it's something that benefits humanity tremendously. I'm sure Elon probably took on some debt, right? At times to do his thing. So I can't say that debt entirely is a bad thing, but too much of it for sure. And especially if it's debt that's imposed on you, AKA by the state, AKA taxation. Yeah, taxation is theft or extortion, depending on how you look at it. Beneficiary, what's going on? I am not a people. No, that's the thing, right? I'm an individual. That's the thing. Yeah, I am not a collective. I'm with you, man. I'm with you, Goalie Ball. Yeah, I am not the fucking Borg. And I don't like people treating me or treating others like that. No, we're individuals. Like I say, even at my family level, I don't love everybody in my family equally. Matter of fact, I think it would be the worst thing possible if I just loved everybody in my family equally. What would be the point in anyone striving to do better? Well, there'd be no point in whatsoever, would it? Because they'll just, Dad or my hubby or all just love me anyways, right? I could be the worst person ever. He'll still love me. No, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And every one of us in our own personal life knows this. I don't think there's a human among us that wouldn't acknowledge that reality in their personal life. And it doesn't change just because somebody puts on a fucking suit or calls themselves a politician. They're humans. They're cut from the same cloth you or I, right? But yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, I'm not a Marxist or a Zionist. And I never played one on TV either. Yeah, Greg is a streamer. He's even coming out with a documentary. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I'm not sure who that one. Yeah, okay. Individual equals no class. Hey, I got class. Don't. All right, let me. Okay. What else we got down here? You talking to me? You talking to me? Hey, you talking to me? Hey, did you grab my ass? I joke. I watched A Night at the Roxbury the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. If you've watched the movie, you get what I'm saying. Stop gaslighting. Somebody gaslighting? Okay, let's not be bickering in the chat here, folks. Although, you guys do your thing. I'm not your daddy, but yeah, let's try to keep it civil. Okay. Every individual, exactly individual versus clown. Exactly individual. I think I'm just so far behind on the tweets here that it's just, yeah, I like that. That's quite the emoji. Let the clowns run America. Anyways, let me just see what else we got here. Oh, I see my name here. Who's gaslighted? Bennett mentioned Greg. I agree with him. Maybe you should open your ears and listen. Oh, you guys are having a little dispute, are you? Well, Liquid Gal can handle herself, so it's all good. The caller is a noob. Maybe. Well, that's the thing. Actually, I should get to that. Really, I should get to that point when we're having the conversation is how far along are you at in terms of understanding liberty? Because that's the thing. It's weird when you talk to people. It's like we're not all at the same level. The same with, like I say, so I work on cars. I'm not on the same level as a guy that just learned to do his first oil change, right? Like, hey, I work on cars. I've built multiple engines. So many engines. So it's a difference, right? It's a difference. And I know actually not just how the internal parts work, but I understand how to extract power, which requires thinking outside of the box. So that's the thing. There's mechanics that can just replace parts, right? But you could train someone quite easily. That's just learn repetition, right? That's just repetition. But in terms of how do you make more power than this guy does, and you got to figure it a way, and no one else is going to give you the secret. That's critical thinking skills. That's problem solving. That requires thinking outside the box. And it's the same with when you're talking about politics or philosophy or history, or any kind of knowledge or wisdom for that matter. We're not all at the same level. And it's kind of weird because at least that's the thing. And people reject hierarchies, but hierarchies are very important, actually. Just like if you were playing on a team, like I was talking about before. So even the leads, right? You got the captain, you got the assistant captain, you got the goalie, right? You got the goalie, you got your forwards, you got your centerman, you got the couple guys that usually, do the center for the puck drop, right? That's good at that. And you got your defense, right? So there's different roles and there's different levels of competency in terms of someone that's maybe a rookie on his first year or someone who's got maybe 30 years of experience, right? There's going to be a difference there. And it's kind of normal that people accept, at least, especially when they see it, right? You don't necessarily have to believe it, but if you see that that person is competent or that person has more skills than you, that's that Canadian mentality. It's like Canadians don't like to accept that other people have higher competence or levels of skills than they do. It's that tall poppy syndrome again. And it's really going to be not just the denigration, it's going to be the destruction of this country if people don't get the fuck out of that shit. You got to accept the fact, like I say, especially for someone like myself. Yeah, I'll toot my own horn. Yeah, I've spent like 15 years, and I mean just not tacitly, right? I mean spending morning to night some days, many, many, many days actually, filling my head with a shitload of knowledge, more knowledge than I ever thought I'd ever be able to absorb in that amount of time, to be honest with you. But I have. Can't remember it all, don't retain it all, but I retain a sizable portion of it. But it's weird when people get into conversation or dialogues and we're supposed to act like we're all on an even field or even keel or equal in some way. No. We really do have to get to the point where you have to acknowledge competence, skill, and natural hierarchies, not forced hierarchies, but natural hierarchies. And I think that would at least be conducive to at least getting the right people, right? Because now everybody, like I say, in Canada, everybody wants to nobody wants to be the tall poppy, but everybody wants to be the tall poppy. Everyone was anti-Canada, and now they're all pro. No, but you know what I mean? It's just, but Canadians are just so constantly filled with this equity, inclusion, and diversity bullshit, and we're all equal, that is, people don't even seem to perceive, who are the people that have the knowledge, the skills, and the wisdom, and who don't. And that, I guess, I think that's a massive and a major part of the issues that we see today. Anyways, we're going to read a few more of your chats here before we tie it up. What are we at? 119? Might just go at an hour and a half for this one, folks. God equals Babylonian, the Talmud. Yes, okay. Not a Christian God. Okay. Oh, hi, Sinico. Long time no here. Okay. All right. Okay. After the last reformations, more pagan beliefs that are positive were incorporated into Christianity. Well, that's the thing. Like, because they're humans, like it's just gone all over the place, right? And like I say, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, which is why, other than the Christianity thing, which like I say, but it depends on who you listen to, because that's the other thing. You can listen to people who have a Christian heritage or background and get some widely different or varied perspectives as well. So yeah, that's a tough one too, which is why, you got to believe that the future, if we evolve properly, that is, it may very well end up being something along the lines in terms of UP. It's that kind of secular ethics that someone like Stefan Molyneux has put a tremendous amount of work and time in over the years to try to formulate, so that humans don't have to constantly seek out mystical entities or the state as the arbiter of authority in terms of what's right and wrong, what's ethical or what's unethical, right? What's legal or illegal. Because, of course, laws, the whole point of laws is they're supposed to be based upon ethics. There has to be an ethical underpinning to a law for it to make sense in any society. It would be the same in your family, right? You don't get to just decide, today I'm going to beat my kid because he ate an orange. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to do it if he cuts the grass. Or no, you know what I mean? If your authority was so arbitrary or your edicts were so nilly-willy and all over the place, well, could you imagine how dysfunctional your family would be? Well, that's basically what we're living in today in terms of the state. Is there's no coherence, there's no cohesion, there's no principles, there's literally no principles at all. It's just ruled by edict. It's ruled by might makes right, or what I say goes. It's my way or the highway. Oh my God, that made me think of a lot of boomers when I was growing up. It's my way or the highway. Oh my God. Hashtag not all. Once again, not all. I have to point this out again too, man. Some of the greatest people I know, like my stepdad's a boomer. He's a great guy. Awesome guy. So not all boomers, folks, but come on. You can say a generalized statement. It can be applicable without you getting offended or taking it personal, right? Keep it in mind. Power of attorney equals self-control. Well, self-control is, that's extremely important, right? And anyways, okay, let me scroll down here. I'm going to way down the bottom here because I'm so far down on the chats here, folks. Sorry. Okay, we are boomers, Gen X. Which is it? Are you a boomer or Gen X? Because, they're two different things. Although they do kind of have that overlapping period, right? If you're the older Gen X and the younger boomer, there was some definitely cross-pollination. And it might have similarity thinking. Well, because you might have been in the same class. That's the thing. In terms of age, right? That's where the demographics kind of do skew, where they kind of overlap each other. Because, if you were in grade 9 and you're at at the very top of Gen X, right? And then the next year is boomer, but they're in grade 10. Well, you guys probably have a fair amount in common because you probably went to the same school. You're only a grade apart, right? There's probably a lot of similarities. So there would be some definitely cross-pollination that way, but it is applicable that each generation kind of has their own thing. And Gen X and boomers, there's definitely some serious difference there. I find as a Gen X, and once again, hashtag not all, but I find me personally, my lived experience, how I was raised, the whole thing, way more to the live, let live mentality, the libertarian, ethics. It's so conducive with me and who I am as a person. It's like, well, it was basically a no-brainer once I learned about it, right? Anyways, let's see what we got else going on here. Liquid Gal, exactly. I must have sent something right. Okay, I'm out. I'm just kidding. Okay, well, let's see here. We must stand for Canada individualism, not centrism or centralized radicalism where there is no identity or just collective unity. Yeah. Yeah. What is a Canadian? Well, actually, you know what? We didn't quite get as much entrenched into the what does it mean to be Canadian thing. And actually, that's something I'm probably going to do that a couple more times. I might have to do a couple more live streams. And hopefully, at some point in time, we're going to get to a point where if you put it all together, we'll come up with some idea, because we did kind of banter back and forth about it. I had lost a say in terms of the multiculturalism. Well, because of multicultural, well, what is the culture then? What the hell is the culture? But I would ask you folks, actually, if you want to, just as a thought experiment right here and right now, just answer in the comment section. To you, what does it mean to be Canadian? Because I have a really difficult time to discern like what distinguishes me as a Canadian, right? Other than it's usually the things that I perceive as the difference. And at least when I'm comparing to our American counterparts, I usually don't like to think of them because they're kind of soul crushing. So what's the difference? Like I say, we're more collectivist in nature. Americans are more individualist. They're more fuck you to the crown, fuck you to power, fuck you to authority, right? We're more beat me, spank me harder, daddy. Give me another one. You know, like I'm not, like I say, it's a weird thing. And then what's the other thing about Canada? Well, I mean, politeness, but I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, even someone like Hitler probably had manners and was polite, at least to people he cared about, right? I'm sure at least people in his family he was polite to and had manners. So what does that mean to be polite, right? Matter of fact, I don't want someone like Trudeau. He comes across someone who would be polite, but that kind of guy would be just polite enough that he could get close enough to you. You think, oh, well, this guy's no threat. Look how polite he is. Look, he's wearing pink socks. Look at him. He walks effeminate. This guy, come on. There's nothing to this guy. He's no threat. He's no danger. Yeah, Trudeau, how you doing, man? He gets like within a striking distance of you, and the next thing you know, he's got you shanked 4 or 5 times in your ribs, right? So what the fuck does that mean? Because, you know, Trudeau was Mr. Polite, Mr. Feminist, Mr. Socks himself. And what did he do? Well, pretend that he's polite and all about feminism and caring about minorities and all that stuff. And then the minute who are standing up for their freedoms and waving that flag and defiance against the vaccine mandates, well, what did he do? He already went tyrannical with the mandates, but then he doubled down on it. Invoked the never before used emergency act to beat down, imprison, fine, jail, confiscate, or seize their bank accounts, right? Or freeze their bank. I mean, think about that. And this is what from polite Canada. What the fuck does that even mean? Once again, I like to use the words in the meaning that they actually mean. That's how I actually understand the language. I don't even know. A lot of Canadians don't even seem to know how to speak English anymore because they talk and they use these words, but they don't seem to know what the meanings are. Which is why I guess there's a lot of missing dialogue or the conversations that are taking place. It's like a Chinese guy and an Eskimo trying to talk to each other. It's like, no, that's not working out too good, is it? Because they're not speaking the same fucking language. That's why. And all they seem to recognize is every once in a while when the other one gets gone, raised, you know, shaking their fist in their face or something, right? That's not working out too well. But anyways, I'm just going to look at a few more of the comments. Actually, wonder. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. WHO tread on the Liberty, but the Eagle I see South Carolina. Yeah, the free Eagle. But yeah, no, that's like I say. What does it mean? I'm just trying to look and see if you guys could figure out what the hell it means to be Canadian, because I'm having a hard time, folks. I'm having a hard time. There's got to be something, right? There's got to be something. What is it? I mean, it's colder climate. You gotta believe. I just believe like it seems practical that if you live in a northern climate, it's where it's brutally cold for half of the year. And this year, man, it's been a fucking motherfucking cold winter on the East Coast this winter. Anyways, you gotta have a little bit more resilience. You would think there would have to be some strength, some thick skin at bare minimally, but that's the thing. We live in modern amenities, right? So you really don't, unless you choose to, right? Which I do. I choose especially when I used to snowmobile and all that stuff. I love putting my in those elements, man. I used to be out snowmobiling in -30, -35, bitter cold, like we're, yeah, you could freeze in a matter of a minute or two if you didn't have the right kind of attire on. So I like that. But think about it, in the modern world we live in today with all the modern amenities and indoor heating and all that stuff, is I guess that's the thing. Canadians historically, a few generations ago, they would have been some hardy fucking men and women, right? In the pioneer days for sure, right? Especially back before central heating. I mean, the people that came to these countries and built them to what they are today, yeah, they would have been some hardy beeps. Skin is, as thick and as sturdy as an alligator. I'm sure some of them, but that's not the Canada we're talking about today, is it? So what is the Canada? What does it mean to be Canada today? Because I don't know. Like I can't say I didn't live in 1860s. I didn't live in the early 1900s. I was born in 1970 and I'm alive in 2025 at 54. I'll be 55s. But I don't know. I don't know what does it mean to be Canadian in 2025. I mean, if I go by the dominant voices, like in terms of academia, like all the institutions, the media, the politicians, I don't know, be a beta cuck, feminist or feminazi, or men that I guess don't have the wherewithal to stand up against anything, right? Really? I don't know. It's just weird. What? Just nonstop pride parades, nonstop victimhood, the victim cult, identity politics. That seems to be wokeness, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, the race to the lowest common denominator, the race to the bottom. Is that what it means to be Canadian? Because if it is, I don't want nothing to fucking do with any of that shit. What I'm saying, folks, what I'm saying to my fellow peeps, my fellow Canadians is what I want Canada to mean for me and the peeps that I surround myself with, what we want Canada to mean, if there's going to be a culture or a cultural identity, is to be something along the lines of what our American counterparts are, but even more so because we're in the great fucking white north, in the great coldness, where we've had to fucking, where we still to this day, like I say, we don't get the nice southern climates like Florida and California and Arizona and all these places and all this, palm trees. No fucking palm trees in Canada. But what I, as a Canadian, to me, what I would love, what I dream, if we're going to come up with a Canadian identity, if I could invent a Canadian identity, is something along the lines about that American exceptionalism, but even more exceptional because of the fact that we've had to do it way the fuck up here in the north, in the bitter cold, sparsely populated, massive expanse of a country, right? With some big motherfucking animals up here too. You know what I mean? So that to me is, I don't want to be necessarily American. I want to be Canadian, but I want to be the kind of Canadian that I can hold my head high and have some kind of pride and dignity in it. And so far, the kind of people who are promoting Canadian values or the Canadian culture aren't doing that at all. Matter of fact, they're doing the exact opposite. And yeah, Pierre Poilievre is no better, folks. Is no better. Yeah, he's got a little bit of the gift of the gab. He's a politician. But I expect, hey, and once again, I would love to be proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I'm begging to be proven wrong and hope that maybe before election actually comes, maybe enough of MAGA, maybe enough of Trump and his ilk and the people he surround himself, maybe enough of that will be around that'll rub off on the Pierre some way, right? Maybe there'll be enough of that courage of their conviction, enough of that boisterous, enough of that fuck you unapologetically, right? Saying, no, I'm standing up for my damn freedom and I don't give a shit. Oh, and you like using force? Hey, well, I'm gaining my freedoms. If I got to use force to defend my freedoms against you, I'm going to do so. Because that's what the state is, right? Once again, I prefer, as a libertarian, hey, how about everybody put it down, let's use their words. But hey, the state is violence, and the people are looking to use it to impose their will on us. And Pierre Poilievre don't even have the courage of his conviction say, listen, you fuckers, you better fuck off, because once I get the fucking stick, right? Right? Once I take over the helm, Well, you better watch out. No, he's not even doing that. Like I said, just like I was mentioning to the gentleman earlier. No, Pierre Poilievre is like, hey, what poll's good? Hey, does that resonate good with polls, like to the people? Hey, will a liberal accept it? Because we got to be able to bring in some of the liberals, rather than just being unapologetically standing up for what he believes in and have the courage of his convictions. Pierre Poilievre is a weak-kneed POS. Sorry, it is what it is. You know, I wish that wasn't the case. You know, maybe he's different in his personal life. I don't know. Like I say, maybe his wife loves him for some reason, but maybe it's because he's gentle. I don't know. I have no idea. But like I say, from anyone that runs any of the parties in this country, or anyone that ran it in the past, or anyone who I perceive that might be running in the future, wimp, and more wimps. And if they're not guys, well, feminist, progressive, and more feminist. Matter of fact, this is the crazy part. In the political realm, it's the feminists and the progressives who are acting more manly these days, actually do have more of the courage of their conviction. I mean, look at how tyrannical they'll go. And they're doing it unapologetically. And a lot of them are like feminists, like Trudeau. Like Trudeau was the one that invoked the Emergency Act, right? A feminist. Pierre Poilievre probably would have never done that. And he claims to be a conservative man. Once again, feminist, sock-wearing Trudeau, you know, at least you got to give the man that he had the balls. I think he's a petty tyrant piece of shit, to be honest with you, but at least he had the balls to do it. It's more I can say from anyone else in any of the establishment parties in this country. Right? Anyways, folks, I'll probably tie this live stream up. Like I say, I'll save some of my rant for the next one. And yeah, I'm looking to reach out to some more peeps. I've been kind of doing them more regularly lately, and I'm going to try to do a bunch more too, just to see what's going on. Oh, yeah, best can in the world. How? Inquiring minds want to know. Anyways, thanks to all you folks that did join the live stream. I really do appreciate it. Like I say, I'll make an announcement the minute I get a chance to do so. Like I say, I got some other things in the works, but I'm going to wait and hold off because I actually have to make a trip up to Ontario here in the not so distant future for a couple days. So, like I say, I'm just kind of playing it by ear for now, and I'll let you guys know. Trust me, I'll put it all over social media. Next time I got, whether it's an interview style live stream or if I'm just going to be spitballing myself. So you guys have yourself, what is today? Sunday? Yeah. Have a great Sunday. Have a good week. And if you're on the East Coast, better get your shovels ready and your snow blowers and your plows, because it looks like it's coming down and it's going to keep on coming down. And as you know, I just barely got ourselves dug out from the last storm where we got just over a foot of snow. So yeah, at least I made room for this pile anyways, and we'll get to that. Hopefully it won't be too much. A foot is all we really need. No more. There's plenty enough for the snowmobiles for now, right? For now, we're definitely going to need some more, but let's keep it down to at least under a foot here, because I don't have my plow. I just got a snowblower. Anyways, you guys have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.